A wise rich man approached 6 men at the start of the day with an offer. He said he was conducting research and would pay each for their effort. The task was simple. Hold a rock all day in one hand without any other assistance other than your closed hand. At the end of the day, we'll discuss how it went and I'll pay you for your effort and insights. The first person we'll call the permanent negative labeler said, "Yes, I dropped it a few times because I'm such a klutz." The wise rich man said, "Dude, don't be so hard on yourself." The wise rich man gave him a hug and paid him what was agreed. The second person we'll call the deceiver lied and said he never dropped the rock, although he did many times. The wise rich man smiled at the explanation and paid him as agreed. The third person was the blame shifter. He said, "It dropped a few times, but last time I checked, we live on a planet with gravity, am I right?" The wise man agreed and said, "I can't argue with the reality of gravity." Then the blame shifter added, "I also dropped it when a clumsy person bumped into me." The wise rich man said, "Yes, the world has gravity and clumsy people, that is for sure." He paid him as agreed. The fourth person, whom we'll call the diminisher, explained his experience this way. "I might have dropped it a few times, but it's no big deal. Who doesn't drop a rock now and again?" The wise rich man agreed and said, "I understand, thank you for your time," and paid him as agreed. The fifth man, whom we'll call permanent, negative and pervasive, explained his experience this way. "Well, when I tripped and dropped the rock just 10 minutes into it, I knew my day was going to be one problem after the other." The wise rich man smiled and said, "I hear you, brother. We all have days like that," and paid him as agreed. The sixth person, we'll call the learner, who saw setbacks as temporary and within his control, explained his experience this way. "Yes, I dropped it twice. Once when I allowed myself to be distracted, and once when I decided to help a friend and needed both hands." The wise rich man nodded, then asked, "I hear you dropped it twice, correct?" "Yes," he responded. "I recommitted to holding it and did so the rest of the day." He nodded and paid him as agreed. The wise rich man picked one to return for continued employment. The wise rich man had read Martin Seligman's book, Learned Optimism, and could predict who, based on their explanatory style, would be a high performer. Seligman showed with uncanny accuracy who, after a setback, would likely respond in a way that would result in high performance, from sports teams to salespeople. What did Seligman find? Your explanatory style matters. Those who frame setbacks as personally defining, permanent or pervasive stay stuck. In contrast, those who see setbacks as temporary, impersonal and isolated tend to bounce back quickly and effectively. Seligman would have disqualified person number 1, "I'm such a klutz," and person number 5, "I tripped and knew it would be a bad day," immediately. But what about the liar, diminisher and blame shifter? Seligman didn't comment directly on these explanatory styles. But would you invest in someone who couldn't own their role in a breakdown or lied? Your narrative about a breakdown, or what Seligman called the explanatory style, is the single biggest predictor of thriving, growing, learning and accomplishing. I saw explanatory styles play out clearly with an aspiring comic. She approached my band and asked to do a 10-minute set while the band was on break. Other than one laugh, she bombed. I felt embarrassed for her, but listened to her explanation after the awkward set. "Oh, I'm funny, but I was workshopping material, you know, seeing what might work. No worries, I'll adjust. That's what all good comics do." The aspiring comic did a set a week later, and it was funnier. About 30% of her material got a laugh. You can guess that with each set she did, she got better. Why? Her explanatory style. "I'm funny" is a permanent positive label. "I'm workshopping material" means that she's in a learning mode and any setbacks or lack of laughs is temporary. And she was right. Does explanatory style predict who will recover from alcohol abuse? A longitudinal study following 3 recovery approaches to alcohol abuse eventually concluded that recovery was less a function of the intervention method and more a function of commitment to change and expectation. That change was possible. Explanatory narrative. If our explanatory style matters so much, why do some fall into the traps of explaining setbacks with permanent negative labels? I suck. This is permanent. Denial, diminishment, blame shifting, and deception. The answer is simple. There's an emotional payoff for doing so. When the setback isn't your fault but the fault of gravity and those clumsy people, you get the emotional payoff of feeling innocent. But there's a cost. Unless you can see and own your role in a setback, there's no learning, you're stuck. The same is true for all the other explanatory style traps. There's an emotional payoff and it's costly. Back to the comedian who kept learning in spite of the painful lack of laughs. Imagine if she had responded the first night with permanent negative labels, denial, blame shifting, etc. She might have felt better, but it wouldn't have led her to learn and adjust. By the way, every comedian workshops materials. When you see a comedian filling stadiums and killing it with a great set that came from workshopping jokes in out-of-the-way venues, they kept learning and adjusting because they didn't take a flat joke personally, understood the value of learning and kept adjusting until they had great material. That's a healthy life, and it comes from a healthy explanatory style. Are you ready to become aware of yours and adjust? Thanks for joining us today at the Change Capability Institute. We'll see you in the next video.